Great, thanks very much. So good afternoon and welcome to the Reconvene Standing Committee on City Finance and Services meeting of June 15th, 2022, reconvening from June 8th, 2022. This committee meeting is being convened by electronic means as authorized under Part 14 of the Procedure Bylaw. As such, committee members may participate in phone or by electronic means. Committee members participating by electronic means are reminded that, in accordance with Section 14.13 of the Procedure Bylaw, video must be enabled in order to confirm quorum, and any council member whose video is disabled will be marked absent for that portion of the meeting. Members are also asked to please advise the clerk if they need to leave the meeting. If a committee member loses connection during the voting process, staff will get you back online quickly while we suspend the voting process. The staff contact information has been circulated to you. Video of committee members speaking, presentations, and vote results will be projected on the live stream when available. Members of the public who wish to participate are encouraged to submit comments online or participate via telephone. Members of the public are strongly encouraged to attend remotely. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We thank them for having cared for this land and look forward to working with them in partnership as we build this great city together. I also want to take a moment to recognize the immense contributions of the City of Vancouver staff who work hard every day to help make our city an incredible place to live, work, and play. Clerks, may we have the roll call, please?
Chair Bly, or Councillor Bly in the chair. Mayor Stewart is on a leave of absence. Councillor Carr. Councillor DiGenova. Not here. Councillor Fry.
Here.
Councillor Swanson.
Here.
Councillor Hardwick.
Present.
Councillor Wiebe.
Present.
Councillor Boyle.
Present.
Councillor Dominato.
Present.
Councillor Kirby-Young.
You have quorum, Chair Bly.
Thank you very much. So we have items 9 to 13 on the agenda to hear from speakers, followed by debate and decision. And if an additional day is required, the meeting will reconvene on Thursday, June 16th, 2022 at 3 p.m. Finally, I'd like to remind council members that if amendments are brought forward, they must be submitted to the clerk in final written form before the council member introduces them. And please ensure the clerk has received your amendment by using the council meeting amendments DL. So before we begin, I'd like to remind speakers that they have 5 minutes to make their comments, should state whether they are in support or in opposition of the recommendations, and may only speak once. Council members have up to 3 minutes to ask questions to speakers. However, speakers are under no obligation to respond. And I will also ask if speakers are residents of Vancouver if it is not noted on the speakers list. Following the last speaker on the speakers list for each item, we will go back through the list for those who were not present when their name was initially called. I also want to note the City of Vancouver's long-standing commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including utmost respect for all genders. I remind Council that when addressing speakers and staff, we will avoid using gendered honorifics and will instead refer to the person by first and last name, role, or title. So our first item on the agenda today is item 9, dual licenses, cocktail culture, and vibrant urban nightscapes. Previously members motion B3, which was moved and introduced by Councillor Fry and seconded by Councillor DiGenova.
Point of privilege, Chair.
Yes, please go ahead, Councillor Hardwick.
Sorry to interrupt, but I have a note from Councillor DiGenova that she is on medical leave, but is chiming in through WebEx. She was unable to make the roll call and asked me if I would pass that along.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. One moment. Okay, I've just been informed from the clerks that we'll need the camera turned on, Councillor DiGenova, so that we can mark you as present in the meeting. Okay, so we are going to be moving on to hear from speakers on this motion, and our first registered speaker is in person here.
Point of information, Chair.
Point of information. You need to have the floor, Councillor Wiebe. Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's important that Melissa does put her camera on because I have declared a conflict of interest on this because of my interests in Portside Pub, which is a liquor primary in the area. So I cannot be here for this meeting, and we need to ensure that there's quorum.
We appreciate that we do have quorum because we do have counselors here in the chamber, but we do appreciate
Okay.
on a point of your own personal privilege to
Yeah,
reaffirm
everybody's
that
caution.
conflict of interest, which is very helpful. So thank you, Councillor Reid. So as I
If I can
said,
get moved and text when this item is completed. Thank you.
most certainly.
Sure. May on a point of personal privilege is Councillor DeGenova.
Yes, Councillor DeGenova.
Thanks. Just wanted to share that I will try and turn my camera on when I can, but unfortunately, parenting responsibilities and my child's illness will prevent me from being on at all times. But I realize if I'm recording a vote, I need to have my camera on. So I will try my best. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's noted. So we will now continue with our first registered speaker, Lewis Hart.
Good afternoon. Council, I'm in support of this motion. I first spoke on the effects of the liquor moratorium during a recent special council meeting, highlighting how its current enforcement has created inverse impacts on community safety and diminishes viability for a sector in need of recovery. I've had the pleasure to talk further on the subject with some of you and have shared reputable supporting studies with both objective and subjective findings. Today's dual licensing proposal, rather than an entire removal of the moratorium, allows for small businesses to expand their operations and provide controlled social environments for liquor consumption and an opportunity for the city to build a long-term vision of a vibrant and social nightlife. COVID provides our industry a chance to pivot reliance from late-night venues that stigmatize our profession and place preference to small businesses that focus on product quality and education. While recovery of the entire industry remains a key priority, the current moratorium heavily favors the recovery of large venues such as nightclubs and beer halls, who operate with reduced overhead and greater revenue potential. The moratorium's current state also heavily favors ill-thought passion projects for those who can afford monopoly-priced liquor licenses over small businesses opened by industry professionals. Over the last 2 months, multiple venues in Chinatown have been receiving international recognition, with 4 of them recognized as the best in Canada. These businesses have become the face of our hospitality scene and set a precedent when competing for guests. However, no matter what standard is set, these businesses are restricted solely under a food primary license and find themselves turning away sales, staffing shortages, and hemorrhaging profit with inefficiencies. Dual licensing provides more opportunity for controlled environments, such as restaurants and cocktail bars, to retain guests as late as 2 a.m., opposed to guest migration to nightclubs. Food primary spaces also offer the best environments for fundraisers and corporate events. However, licensing restricts standing and mingling after a meal is served, resulting in events being held in large nightclubs or beer halls, which in turn results in lower quality food options and much reduced liquor education. As conventions are a large part of the city's tourism plan, this motion allows a grandstanding of our city with the best hospitality options. Provided studies from the University of Oxford and the Mayo Clinic also detail benefits local drinking establishments have on a community, finding that people who drink at local bars enjoy improved health and well-being due to the perception of a stronger community, as well as a vast improvement in mental health for men respectively. Although there are safety factors with alcohol consumption, our industry unfortunately has a ripple effect where one venue can create a stigma or targeting for all. The existing moratorium misrepresents data, with recommendations targeting an entire market rather than holding negligible operators accountable. The data indicating a correlation between liquor primary addition and calls to the police need to be given the same weight when reviewing the reduction of liquor primaries. If the data indicates their increase as a primary factor, then COVID gave a perfect opportunity to see a steep decrease while they were closed. However, this was not the case, with calls and societal problems becoming a priority issue. Recommendations also clearly state that the data provided was too old to be reliable, but was still included with a subjective stance that it could be used as an indicator. Phase 1 of the moratorium was harm reduction, primarily aimed at liquor retail, without much consideration for responsible hospitality owners. The moratorium states that it should be flexible and at future dates dependent on results and circumstances, with Phase 2 being economic growth. COVID has expedited this need as we're seeing fractious aspects aspects of the community and the largest labor shortage we will face in our careers. The proposed motion in its current form will allow for venues to operate close to their current state, but focus their kitchen labor needs to primary hours while quelling archaic views of liquor establishments. While the downtown east side is blighted with safety issues and anti-Asian sentiment, the viability dual licensing provides business will also result in more inclusive and safe nighttime spaces, ports in the storm for people at risk of assault and hate crimes, and generates revenue to legacy businesses as suppliers and through exposure. With a much expanded street presence in Chinatown and Gastown, it also vastly diminishes the window for property crime to be committed. In conclusion, over the last 2 years, Vancouver's hospitality scene has shown its ability to operate responsible businesses and follow guidelines, whilst being vocal against outliers who operate outside of the lines. As industries are finding recovery avenues from all levels of government, supporting this motion is an important step the Council can make in supporting ours.
Thank you very much. You do have questions from Councillor Kirby-Young. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Hi, Lois. I have 2 questions for you because I really appreciated your really articulate and your kind of global comments. I have 3 minutes, so 2 questions. The first one is, in your case specifically, can you just zero in on what you will do differently in particular at your establishment? So do you envision getting some of those evening group bookings? Are you going to change your food service hours? How would it change?
Food service won't change for us. We'll be able to take on more fundraisers. I've had to turn down 3 fundraisers in the last 3 months. 2 of them were towards youth in the downtown east side, because once they finished eating, they want a space where they can mingle and connect and network. And if you have to be seated the entire time, that's not a space that's going to allow for you to raise funds or have an environment. And so I've had to turn away that business. And it's going to end up somewhere else.
Okay, because you're operating as a food primary.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. And then my second question is that we've heard from some folks in Chinatown coming from different points of view that are concerned about some of the legacy businesses and thought that it would make sense to phase this and to limit it in the rollout to existing businesses or those within stream applications, or to potentially encourage some of those businesses, if they're new, right, because I understand you're existing, to go onto second floors or basement premises, et cetera, so they can keep some of that culturally local serving retail that is that like kind of that life during the day.
We're open during the day. I think all of the speakers you're speaking to today, we're not nighttime businesses. Like, my business opens at 12 o'clock for lunch. I support the legacy businesses. I'm not a business that beats my chest and says how much we put into the community, but we've donated over 300 meals to the Maywa seniors. We just don't post it on social media, and the other businesses are doing the same. We've injected anywhere between $200,000 to $300,000 into each of those legacy businesses on the streets that we're in. New businesses will continue to do that because of that social fabric. That
I think the concern that was raised is that the folks that can afford the liquor licenses will have the top dollar and they'll outbid some of the smaller businesses. So could there be kind of a smart approach in terms of allocating space? You can have some street level retail, you can have some cool restaurants and bars on second floors for new folks coming in, and sort of diversify to building on what's already there. Does that kind of make sense?
I do see the viewpoint of it. I think it's also cherry picking. It's trying to cherry pick business and dictate where it goes. And for Chinatown, it's a neighborhood that is got a large vacancy rate, and so it's by cherry picking it, you're only going to be limiting the amount of activity coming that way. And it's also it's being held from a bastion of archaic views or a subjectivity point. Nighttime businesses add viability to daytime business. They don't wash it out. To Councillor Hardwick's point last week, she spent every weekend going to the Marco Polo Club. Marco Polo Club didn't close the businesses around it. It was part of that neighborhood. And so new business helps.
That's my time, but thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby-Young. Actually, you do have questions, Councillor Fry.
Yeah, thanks. Louis, what does this mean from a business operational side? So if you were able to, for instance, close your kitchen and continue operating, so that the current structure of a dual license in the city of Vancouver means you can stay open after 10 o'clock. So that would mean you could be a liquor primary after 10 and not operate your kitchen. What does that mean as far as a cost to operate a kitchen? Without getting too into the details, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think just the way that the market is right now, a line cook is earning anywhere between $18 to $22 an hour. Plus, the way that the market is, it's benefits on top of that. And so you're looking at a general cost of about $25 an hour to keep it open. Less than 5% of food sales is after 10 o'clock. We're not a late night city for food. And so any chance of making profit on, say, a Monday through Thursday is being bled out after 10 o'clock. It doesn't really change too much. The licensing also restricts us from doing things like bar snacks. So we actually have to have a fully operating kitchen. All the venues that are there right now and the way that the motion's worded means that a kitchen has to be built, a kitchen has to be functional. It's not going to create a scenario where we're just like not using our kitchens anymore and turning into nightclubs. We still have to operate the same way, exactly the same way until 10 o'clock. It just means that if we've got 2 kitchen staff, we can focus our business to when food actually needs to leave the kitchen pass. And then also we can be sensible and responsible after 10 o'clock. We're still doing responsible liquor service. It's just whether there's food accompanying it or not. And it's a viability.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that context. I think there's been some confusion from some comments we've received that this was just a shortcut to opening a bar. But in fact, the dual licensing requirements mean that you have to essentially be the same physical space, same restaurant structure, same room. You're just changing the hours of the liquor primary.
To that point, and what I have had as feedback is, well, the nightclub crowd and the restaurant crowd are apples and oranges, but right now there's no place for the oranges. And so, yes, you're still going to get people who want nightclubs going to nightclubs, but a group of doctors or lawyers after 10 o'clock, when they want a social environment, they don't have any other choice right now. That's what this issue is. And dual licensing allows for me to retain a group of working professionals until 2 a.m. in an environment where they have a sense of fun in a responsible space. They're not, the sole option isn't going to a big beer hall with loud music and like liquor.
Great. Thanks, Lewis. I'm out of time.
Thank you, Councillor Fry, and thank you very much. Those are all your your questions today. Thank you. Next, we have speaker number 2, Chris Evans, and speaker number 2 is registered as calling in.
Hello.
Hi there, we can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Council, you're welcome to start.
Thank you, Chris Evans, and I am here to speak in favor of the motion. I'm an owner of real estate, currently built and a plan to build a new hotel in Chinatown, and have actually been in a long discussion with city staff about how to work through licensing, and have actually got nowhere. So this motion, I think, provides certainly the hotel a terrific opportunity to be competitive within the hotel space of really needing a bar. It's not perfect. We were trying to come up with an idea of how to apply for a liquor primary, but given the moratorium, we just couldn't find an avenue to. But I believe that businesses that are adding to the vibrancy of the neighborhood and helping see the neighborhood continue to improve would be a very positive thing. I concur with a lot of what Lewis said, and he's got great experience practically. But we believe that this would be a terrific addition for businesses that are doing a lot for the community when the moratorium was trying to protect probably businesses that weren't necessarily operating and adding to the community as much so as some of the other options going forward. I'll leave it there. I appreciate the time and opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
And thank you very much. There are no questions for you, but we appreciate you calling in today.
Thanks very much.
Next, we have speaker number 3, Sean Heather.
Hello.
Oh, hi there. We can hear you. And if I may, are you a resident of Vancouver?
I am not.
Okay. Thank you. So please go ahead. You have five minutes to speak to council.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Sean Heather, and I'm in favor of the motion to introduce dual liquor licensing. While I'm uncomfortable talking about myself, I feel it is important that I tell you a little bit about me as a base for why my opinion might matter. I arrived in Canada 31 years ago with $50 in my pocket. I'm now 55 years old and the father of 5 kids, with the oldest being 18. I've been inducted into the BC Restaurant Hall of Fame. I'm the owner of the Heather Hospitality Group, though to be correct, I should probably start simply saying the Irish Heather, because due to COVID, the rest of the group has been decimated. In fact, the Heather is my only business still standing. I opened the Irish Heather in 1997, and I've held over 11 liquor licenses in my 25 years of business. I've never had an infraction, and I've never been written up. My wife and I have been in the fight of our lives since the onset of COVID, but we're still here, just about. Give us the weapons and we'll do the fighting. Give us the tools and we'll dig ourselves out of this hole. One such tool is this hybrid liquor license. It allows us to close the kitchen at a time of night when no new business is coming in, and the people remaining have either already eaten or are just in for a nightcap. Why keep the kitchen open with all of the costs that are associated with that to feed people who have already eaten? A couple of years back, I had a party of 50 healthcare professionals booked in for a 3-course meal and drinks. They were large enough to have the exclusive use of the space, and when they finished their last course, we shut the kitchen while they enjoyed drinks in the bar. Minutes after the kitchen closed, a liquor inspector came in and asked to see what was available from the menu. We explained that we were not open to the public, the 50 people had eaten, and the kitchen was closed as a result. To the letter of the law, I had transgressed, and they were unhappy. I was ordered into the liquor board for a re-education session. Operating outside the scope of your license by allowing guests to continue drinking while the kitchen is closed is not allowed. Keeping the kitchen staffed and the ovens on is becoming increasingly difficult and expensive. Take a Tuesday night, for example. Not a very busy night. I have a dishwasher and a cook from 11 a.m. until 7 p.m., and another dishwasher and a cook from 6 p.m. until last call at 11:30. If I was allowed to close the kitchen at 9 p.m., I could have one cook and one dishwasher work noon to 9 with 1 hour of overtime, saving the business 9 hours of labor. But it isn't just about the savings. There's a chronic shortage of kitchen staff. Being able to close the kitchen early allows me to reallocate those precious kitchen hours to busier nights. Everywhere we turn, costs are shooting up. Beef has practically doubled, same for potatoes, vegetable oil. Minimum wage, insurance, rent, property tax, etc. are all at historic highs. We are doing everything we can to lessen the impact of these increasing costs, but there is only so much that we can pass on to our guests. We are at the stage now where most of these costs are being absorbed by the business coming straight off the bottom line. By allowing dual licenses, you offer us the opportunity to shave some dollars off the labor costs and make us stronger in the process. Small businesses are the engine room of any economy, and the hospitality sector provides much of the fire that fuels that engine room. We're not afraid of hard work. We will employ workers, pay taxes, buy fish and vegetables from our neighbors, buy wine from the Okanagan, beer from a local brewery, etc. Just give us this break, allow dual licensing, and we'll clutch it like the lifeline that it is. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. You do have questions from Councillor Fry. Please go ahead, Councillor. Oh, Councillor Fry, just check your audio.
Thanks. Thanks, Sean. I understand that dual licensing is available throughout the city of Vancouver, but you've consistently operated since 2017, but you've not operated outside the sort of moratorium zone that's been arbitrarily selected. Is that the gist?
That's correct. Either Gastown or Chinatown are my stomping grounds.
Right. And so just from again from a logistical point of view, and you sort of touched on like what's involved in keeping a kitchen open. When like, so if you have to keep it open till 2, does that mean that your staff are then having to stay on to clean a kitchen that hasn't really been functional and do that kind of maintenance work after 2:00?
Yeah, I mean, the liquor inspector will come in and touch the front of the oven to make sure it's on. They'll look at the fryer to make sure it's on. Your equipment has to be running. It has to be operational. And you can't clean some of these things when they're hot. So you will have to wait until a certain time to shut them down. And so there's an expense. I mean, a kitchen is not an inexpensive thing to run. And you do have to keep it open and operating to comply.
So these kitchen workers are essentially being forced to stay on for an extra 4 hours, plus the time to clean up, and then try and find a way home at 3 in the morning or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to deal with nighttime issues, staying on that late. Yeah, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to find anybody who will do that, who wants to stay on that late. And that's the problem too, is that you're trying to hire people to work in the kitchen, and the first thing they want to know is what time can I go at, because I have to get the train, I have to get the bus, the SkyTrain, etc.
Right. So it's really hobbling your ability to do business.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for your business, Sean. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming
No,
and speaking to
thanks
me.
for having me.
Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
listening.
And we do have more
Thank you.
questions. You do have more questions, Sean, but thank you very much,
Okay.
Councillor Fry. Next, Councillor Boyle, over to you.
Thanks so much. I am just trying to best understand all the dynamics and implications of this motion, and so I'm curious to hear the impacts you're in Gastown. Does Gastown fall under the Downtown East Side moratoria?
I was in Gastown for 25 years. I moved to Chinatown for this last year. So,
Okay.
yes, it fell under the moratorium for liquor licenses and any amendments to them in the Downtown East Side, including Gastown and Chinatown. So I've just been, all my career has been working in those two neighborhoods.
Okay, I missed you mentioning you moved. Sorry. I'll leave it there. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are all your questions, but we do appreciate hearing you today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Bert Hick, speaker number 4, Bert Hick, who is here in person.
This goes up somewhere. There we go. Madam Chair, members of council, I'm very pleased to be speaking with you today on this topic, and it's an honor to follow Sean Heather, who's a legend in the Irish pub business in Vancouver. I'm wearing 2 hats today. I'm here representing my close friend and buddy Ian Tosteson, who can't, president of the BC Restaurant Food Services Association, who can't be here because he has a conflict he couldn't get out of. But Ian wrote an email to you folks back on June the 8th when you had your marathon council meeting. I think it went to about 11 o'clock or so. And the Restaurant Association is fully supportive of this motion and dual licensing. Ian's email indicated that from his perspective, the moratoriums lead to stagnation and protectionism that's unwarranted, and that the city should promote vibrancy, innovation, and removing the cap on liquor primary licenses for established restaurants will help create that. Moratoriums also create an unnatural movement for people and creating, but should be creating neighborhood clusters, encourage people to seek the services and the hospitality experiences in their own neighborhood, particularly in Gastown, Chinatown. More importantly, if the city is serious about helping the hospitality industry with a severe labor crisis, dual licensing will help because it will reduce costs and increase business opportunities. As you all know from reading the media, the hospitality industry has a severe labor shortage problem. So Ian was very supportive of this. Now I turn to where I put on my hat. I think this motion is brilliant. I wish I could say I wrote it, but here's where I'm coming from. I used to be the general manager of the liquor control licensing branch for the province of British Columbia, where I regulated liquor throughout the province. But now, the last 32 years, I've been consulting in the industry. And so I come at this issue from both a former regulator and also as a consultant. If this motion is approved, it does not mean that every restaurant down in this moratorium area are automatically going to get ability to have a liquor primary license. Because the process will be that each one of these establishments, whether it be Sean Heather's, Lewis's, will have to apply to the city for a liquor primary license for that area. That process involves going through your city licensing department, review by all city departments, including the police department, public notification to the residents in the area as to whether or not they're in favor of it or not, and also bring forward to you a report to council, and staff will recommend approval or not approval. And then once you have a liquor primary license as a dual license, they will also now be subject to something that restaurants are not subject to under your jurisdiction. That is, first of all, a time-limited development permit, where you can pull the development permit if it causes a problem in the neighborhood. And secondly, a good neighbor agreement. So I think that you've got some safety checks in place on that in terms of making sure that you have an establishment that meets the criteria. The other thing is the footprint of the liquor primary license will be right over top of the restaurant area. So we're not expanding into something else, and a restaurant has to be set up as a restaurant. Tables and chairs suitable for dining, commercial kitchen, and a menu. So it's not going to turn into the Roxy nightclub. It's not going to turn into the Brandy's bar down on Hastings Street. It will be a restaurant first and foremost, but has this opportunity later at night to transition into more of a cocktail lounge. With respect to the establishment, the process, I don't support moratoriums. To me, they prop up the dinosaurs, as I call them. The old beer halls in this area of town, the taverns, and the establishment. I like to see creativity and innovation. And we've been involved with some applications over the last several years on Granville Street and other areas where people had to go and buy licensed seats to be able to create a venue for a huge amount of money, even though the concept's totally different than a nightclub. And it just creates a negative feeling in that area. And Lewis mentioned the Marco Polo Club. I remember back in the 80s where that was the hot place to go. It was essentially a supper club. And they brought in some great entertainment, people who are renowned, but we don't have that opportunity down there. Now, from a safety perspective, this concept will bring people into the area and people who live in the area to come out on the street. You'll have more eyes and ears on the streets and cameras, thanks to cell phones, who make the place a little more vibrant than it is right now. It's very stagnant down there. So I think it will bring more people into that area and the right sort of people from a safety perspective. But I think the key thing is it's got to be a bona fide restaurant. You have to have a food primary license before you'd be eligible for this. So
Okay,
I think that makes it clear that it's not going to turn into something that's a nightclub or a pub. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you so much, Bert. You do have questions from Councillor Fry.
Well, first off, I just want to thank you for saying how brilliant you thought the writing was. And also, I think you introduced a few things that I would have liked to have included in the original. So I thank you for that, because I think there is some confusion around the regulatory framework for a dual license. I'm curious from your perspective in that regulatory sort of context, because dual licenses were only introduced in the province in 2017. How have they benefited the industries outside of the downtown east side moratorium and the GED moratorium? Have they been successful across the province?
Generally, yes. Where we've run into it, where a place wants to operate with a food primary by day so that minors can be there, because as a food primary licensed establishment, you have to allow minors in, so families can go in. We did one in Richmond, it's a karaoke establishment, where families want to go in for a family celebratory karaoke experience with kids, but after 10 o'clock at night, that ends and it becomes an adult venue, and it works out quite well.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming and joining us and sharing your insight.
Well, I got to tell you, it's tough getting to City Hall and getting in here these days with all the construction activity.
True that.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are your questions. We appreciate you being here. Next, we're going to move on to speaker number 5, Justin Tisdall, who is registered on as a calling in. Oh, but is here in person. Great. Okay, excellent. So your 5 minutes starts now.
Hi, I'm Justin Tisdall. I'm in support of this motion. I'm from Juke Fried Chicken in the Chickadee Room. Since 2006, I've been working in and around the Chinatown area. So over the past decade plus, I've seen Chinatown evolve and change, and I believe there's different ways we can address the issues that are believed to be surrounding the dual license rule, rather than prevent restaurants in Chinatown from having these dual licenses. I believe the issue is not one of Chinatown's establishments serving liquor without food after 10 p.m., posing an imminent harm to the neighborhood and residents and visitors. The issues, such as violence associated with intoxication and the nuisance it brings with it, have never been a concern in Chinatown. This is an issue about what's right for the community, right for the businesses within it, and the economics in helping the historic community thrive. It's unfair and unjust to punish local independent entrepreneurs operating in Chinatown's historic area compared to other districts. This bill will help us thrive. Chinatown's been greatly affected by the COVID pandemic, which gave mass exodus of retailers and allowed for an increase in drug-related crimes and property damage. The issues arising in Chinatown have never been one dealing with alcohol service or responsible service. As recently as announced, 4 of the top 35 bars and restaurants in Canada are in the Chinatown area. There are other restaurants that are award-winning, and we've made this area world-class. Adding dual licenses will only further enhance this. The problem in Chinatown is not because restaurants are food primary. These aren't establishments that appeal to the clientele that contribute to the conditions this provision is intending to address. In fact, for the most part, these establishments contribute to the local economy and improve the area. By preventing this district that's been decimated by the pandemic, and it's already low income, high risk, further perpetuates the belief that Chinatown should stay impoverished, property taxes should be low, and future investments can be high in the long term. If Chinatown had the opportunity for dual licensing, this would bring more people to a quiet neighborhood at night, which would hopefully quell some of the criminal activity currently happening. Restaurants in Chinatown operate for both lunch and dinner. Dual licensing doesn't prevent this or limit this, it actually enhances this. The restaurants can gain a small amount of profit in the evenings to continue to operate in an economy that's continuously growing. We'll be able to provide jobs and also, again, support the local purveyors in the community. By allowing us the ability to have dual licenses, Chinatown will revitalize with new businesses that could then afford to be in this area. The current businesses will be able to serve the community responsibly, while at the same time elevating Chinatown even further as one of the world's most, as a world-class dining area. Dual licenses would have a positive impact on the Chinatown community and its residents, a positive impact on its businesses and visitors from both near and far. Prohibition needs to be overturned in hopes to bring Chinatown back and save the businesses that are currently feeding the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. You do have questions. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Just curious, I mean, why would you want to stay open late? Wouldn't you want to go home early to your families and stuff? Are the margins that tight that this extra bit of time makes a difference to your bottom line?
I would love to not have to work at all and just spend time with my family. But opening late without having to pay for a second set of kitchen staff to come in and do another shift and serving alcohol allows us that option to be able to make just a little bit more profit. Opening a bottle of alcohol is a higher profit with less costs than running a full kitchen while you already have people in your establishment. Most of us are operating smaller rooms, so you're not dealing with that issue of being in a club or a beer hall. You're more having people who've already been in your establishment that can now stay there and enjoy the rest of their night in Chinatown, and it allows us that ability to keep our doors open and keep people employed.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
And you do have more questions. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Hi, Justin. I may have eaten my fair share of Dukes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure if my hips thank you, but thank you. The question that I have for you is, without sort of providing specifics around profit and that, but just sort of percentage-wise, how much business do you get kind of later at night, and sort of after what time, like after 8, after 10? Like, how does your day kind of shake out in terms of when you're busiest?
Yeah, I'd say our lunches are probably our busiest time of day, aside from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. on every night of the week. After 9 o'clock, you see a steady decline. After 10 o'clock, it goes way down. We have the benefit of being on Kiefer Street, where there's 5, of Vancouver's top 15 restaurants. So we are fortunate that we get a few people going back and forth. But after 10 p.m., there's a pretty steady decline.
Okay, so in your case, like if this passed hypothetically and you had a dual license, do you see yourself kind of running food service till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock?
No, we'd still run till 10. Takeout's one of our biggest things. Our kitchen's always open, so we run until we shut down.
Okay, and when do you shut down now usually?
Right now, the kitchen's done at about 10:30 most nights, and the restaurant does last call at about 10:30.
Okay, so you would just potentially have longer hours for folks that wanted to.
Our bartending team would probably have a few more hours, but it saves us, it's 2 bartenders compared to 8 kitchen staff.
Okay, super. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. And those are all your questions. Thanks for coming to speak to council. Next, we have speaker number 7, Vance Ng.
Hi, City Council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please feel free to start when you're ready. You have 5 minutes to speak to council.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to really share my opinion. I am in support of this. I'm a resident and really grateful to be a resident of Strathcona, just a couple blocks away from Chinatown, and really wanted to just share my experience and observations in nighttime businesses. What I really find is the energy and the vibrancy and the people traffic that it brings to Chinatown really creates a very safe and secure feeling. So I find that when my husband and I are walking our dog at night, we definitely do gravitate to the streets that have those nighttime businesses. And I really feel that this will help amplify that even more. So really want to share my support of this. I really think that it will bring a lot of great things to the community. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
And thank you very much for taking the time to call to council. There are no questions, but we do appreciate hearing your perspective. Next, we have caller number 8, Jordan Ng.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you are sounding great. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Perfect. And I want to say hi to all the community members. I am Jordan Ng from the Vancouver Chinatown BIA. And I want to thank Councillor Fry for presenting this motion to council and the council's ongoing innovative ideas to support business in the city. I've listened to all the speakers, and they've done a great job in the neighborhood, and appreciate the bringing the nightlife back into Chinatown. And we are supportive of this motion. We have a couple caveats that I'd like to bring up that just to give a bit of balance. I know everyone's spoken positively as well. In supporting the motion, we would say that we would like to offer the dual license to the existing businesses or those with permits and applications in process as of this date, as an initial pilot. Given the number of current vacancies of large retail space, there is a concern that these spaces would be quickly targeted by well-funded operators to open numerous bars under the guise of a restaurant, thus organically creating a Granville entertainment district-style neighborhood. And I hear the other speakers saying you have to have a full kitchen in place, but given the amount of investment that goes into one of these operations and the cost that it takes, some of these well-funded larger businesses can afford to set up a full kitchen, but only open it at nighttime. There's no restriction on when time you open. And that being the case, these liquor-based businesses can easily outbid any tourist or local resident-focused retailer, which is the backbone of the retail in Chinatown. The reason for this request is also to stop the expansion of ground floor retail bars that only open in the evening and detract from the active daytime streetscape and the vitality of the neighborhood during the day. Finally, also, given what Chinatown has experienced over the last 2 years with COVID, this would provide the existing businesses immediate protection from an onslaught of new businesses. We have a lot of large vacant retail, and they would be excellent for a restaurant bar. We also suggest that the new dual license be available to new businesses on the second floor and in basements. In the 60s and 70s, Vancouver Chinatown had many second-floor restaurants. Many new buildings were built to accommodate them, and these buildings are still around. They were built, designed, but actually never occupied. So those are opportunities to bring new businesses into Chinatown. And the final point, which has already been mentioned, is to make sure there's a rigorous good neighbor policy, so that the residents in the area will not be affected by loud music into the streets in the early mornings, and businesses in the morning don't have to wake up and clean up a mess from the night before. So we really encourage the businesses, the restaurants in Chinatown. We're really appreciating the culture that has been created and some of the best restaurants and bars, not only in the city, but across Canada. So we just want to make sure there's no unintended consequences in a liquor-focused entertainment district, which could possibly happen with this motion. So that's all I have. Thank you.
And thank you very much. You do have questions, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Hi, Jordan. Thanks for speaking to council. A couple questions, because I know that obviously there's lots of diverse interests and points of view in Chinatown, but what I'm hearing is a common interest in creativity and flexibility in supporting business and revitalizing it. I wonder if you can speak to any conversations or engagement that you've had with other stakeholders, like members of the LSG in Chinatown, if you're comfortable with respect to whether or not they share some of your concerns or perspective or some of the suggestions that you're making around amendments to the motion?
Sure. I've spoken, actually, I spoke to Lewis on this when this motion first came out as well. So I had a kind of a broad conversation. So I've spoken with the chair about LSG as well, and had discussions with him and other community members. And as you know, Councillor Kirby-Young, we had this champ debate, which was quite difficult last week, and there's a lot of stakeholders in Chinatown. So, you know, I think I'm trying to balance this. Of course, we represent the businesses in Chinatown and the property owners, and but you know, there's other voices as well. So sometimes we have to balance those concerns as well. So I think what I'm suggesting is working in that direction. So.
Okay, but just to be clear, based on your conversation, these are sort of shared concerns. There is actually kind of alignment around supporting but taking a measured approach. Is that a fair reflection?
Yes, there is. Like I say, I've had a long conversation with the chair of LSG over the last 2 days on this matter, and we, you know, I can say that we have a consensus on what I've said.
Okay, which is always a positive and a good thing. Okay, thank you. And then can you also speak to, I know that you have some history spending time in Chinatown, and you mentioned the idea of second floors, what it was like when some of the second floor kind of non-street level spaces were activated in Chinatown. I think the Marco Polo Club was one I hear a lot about, for example.
There are, you know, in the day, I would say in the 60s and 70s, there was the Kubla Khan. There was a Jade restaurant, Jade, that moved over to North Vancouver. There was the Guang Chao restaurant. There's a real history of second floor restaurants. The New Diamond was on the second floor. There's a property on the corner of Gore and Union above Honeybee that was actually built. It's as a restaurant, and has a full kitchen upstairs. It has never actually been occupied as a restaurant. I was in Montreal's Chinatown 3 weeks ago, and their second floor restaurants are very active, and that's how it used to be in Chinatown as well. So I think you know, that brings good balance to having people in Chinatown day and night, and allows, you know, the retail businesses to thrive during the day as well, to bring visitors from you know, across the country to support the tourism.
Thanks, Jordan. That's my time. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And those are your questions, Jordan. I appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
to speak to council. And
Thank
then our last registered speaker on this item is speaker number 9, Wally Wargolet.
Speaker number 9 is not on the line.
Okay, thank you very much. So this does bring us to the end of the speakers list. And I just want to pause for a second. We typically go back through, but of course we just called speaker 9. That's the only the only speaker who did not attend at their time. So we're going to move along and close that speakers list. And thank everyone for coming to speak to council. Council, we're looking for any discussion. This motion has been moved, of course, and I see Councillor Swanson is on the queue. I'm going to move us to a main queue, so if we'll just pop you back on. But Councillor Swanson, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just sent an amendment. I'm getting emails from folks in Chinatown saying there hasn't been enough consultation about this. They're worried about the impact on the legacy businesses. And so this is basically a motion that wouldn't rule this out, but would just call for a little bit more, some more consultation beforehand, not just with businesses, but with the Chinatown Legacy Group and the businesses, particularly the food businesses and the cultural heritage businesses.
Okay, so we'll move to an amendment Q1. And if there's any councillors that would like to speak to this amendment, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, I appreciate very much where Councillor Swanson is coming from, because I think that the community feedback is really important. Having said that, I'd like to offer something that I think wouldn't sort of halt us and wait on implementing until the consultation is done, but actually rather would give us the opportunity to support those existing businesses, which we've heard is really important. They've all struggled during COVID, and take a measured approach moving forward. So I think supporting the spirit of Councillor Fry's motion. So sent in a strike and replace to what Councillor Swanson has sent.
Okay, I'll move us to an amendment Q2. And Councillor Kirby-Young, would you like to further introduce your amendment to the amendment?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chair. I had planned to move this as an amendment, just so that Council knows, but given that we're where we are now with Councillor Swanson's doing it as a strike and replace, and I think that this really speaks to the fact that trying to be more creative, be more flexible, support the businesses, but also recognize we have some real historic neighborhoods and gems and concerns in this community, and we want to bring people together. We want to support the cultural and locally serving retail who work on razor thin margins, as do the restaurants and the hospitality operators. I acknowledge that. But really want to, and they brought up concerns such as, for example, organizations like Bow Bay. They're fantastic. They animate the street at night. They don't open until 5:30. And so they're looking for a real balance that they don't depress opportunities for that revitalization during the day, but actually add to it in terms of supporting the existing businesses to extend and have an animated Chinatown both during the day and during the evening. So that's really the spirit of what is proposed here, is to support the existing businesses to move forward with dual licenses. And then take a little bit of time with staff coming back on some more information before kind of doing anything that's wholesale and sort of more broadly sweeping changes than that. So that's generally the spirit of it. The one thing that I really want to offer here, and I think is a compelling point for council to consider, is that, as we know, we have different points of view in Chinatown, and we had a very fulsome discussion last week on the chat, but this is something that a lot of the Chinatown stakeholders are all agreeing on, the BIA, the co-chair of the LSG, and different points of view. And I think that needs to be noted and needs to be considered. So I would share that information with council. I've sent a couple of emails and feedback on that provide council with some of that feedback that I've gotten. You heard from Jordan Ing. I've sent some feedback in writing from Michael Tan. And that's sort of, I'll leave it there in terms of not belaboring the point, but I'm hoping that this strikes the balance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fry, to the amendment. Councillor Fry?
I think you're muted.
And you'd think I'd have figured this out by now, but yes, I am certainly supportive of the amendment to the amendment. I was not prepared to support that amendment originally at all. And I do appreciate the additional material Councillor Kirby-Young's put in here around the basements and the second floors and the consultation with the community. I do just want to circle back and just remind folks that this dual licensing is really not some wedge to open things up to like big bars and that kind of thing. It's a very minor tweak to a very complicated process. It's really just opening it up. Like a dual license is only applicable to an existing food primary that already has a good track record. So they already have to be established as a food primary, even to get to this dual license place. And then, as Bert Hick kind of articulated, there are a lot of hoops to jump through. It's not a slam dunk. So I think that we've already got all the checks and balances built into this kind of system. The motion itself did articulate coming back, reporting back. Let's see how it looks in a year in case that there were some unintended consequences. But really what we're doing is throwing a lifeline to businesses that might not be around in a year if we don't kind of act a little bit more assertively. So the idea in the original amendment that was suggesting that we just do a study and come back in a year, I just don't think it's fair to the businesses that are really struggling and doing a great job of bringing vibrancy to communities that could really use it, especially post-COVID. So thanks to Councillor Kirby-Young for this thoughtful addition to the amendment. I am in support.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. I also appreciate the nuance that we're getting from this conversation. Like other councillors, was hearing concern about what impact this might have in Chinatown, and I think particularly layered on the challenging conversations around Champ and just a lot of shared concern about supporting Chinatown, was wrestling with where to go here. I was prepared to support the amendment Councillor Swanson put forward, really wanting to make sure the community is involved in these conversations. And I really appreciate Councillor Kirby-Young, that engagement, the communication that you shared from the LSG co-chair, that this kind of helps to get at some of those concerns and move us in a good direction. So again, appreciate the sort of teamwork happening there. This isn't my area of expertise, and I've been listening and trying my best to make sure we're getting at that right balance, making sure that those concerns in Chinatown are being taken seriously and that we're not going to see dramatic and negative changes at an important moment there. So I am comfortable supporting the amendment put forward here and continuing to be hearing from the community along with my colleagues here and making sure we're supporting and strengthening the community and the businesses that contribute to it and everyone else who is part of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Councillor Kirby-Young for bringing the strike and replace. I wasn't prepared to support the initial amendment. I will support this in great part because it also responds to community and from the feedback from the BIA and others. But I do want to speak at this time, just in the interest of time, broadly to the motion. So I support the strike and replace, but just say it's critically important that we support this enabling motion because our small businesses in the city are the backbone of our local economy, and we really need to focus on supporting them. And part of that is cutting the red tape, but also part of that is being responsive when they come to us and say, this will allow us to do business differently. This would allow us to give some relief to, in terms of, as we heard, keeping kitchen staff on when it's not necessary, but also providing another venue, an option for people to enjoy. So as Bert was saying, the cocktail lounge component. And so it's that in between, it's not restaurant, it's not a nightclub. But I just need to underscore and stress in supporting this motion is that we deal with a whole range of issues at the city, but one area that I do think we don't pay enough attention to is small business and the local economy, because there are enormous economic benefits to this in terms of supporting jobs, but also adding vibrancy. As many of you know, I brought a motion around having a night economy strategy, and I hope that that's something that we can fulfill. But I'm very supportive of this. I think it's fantastic to see this specific dual license component come forward from Councillor Fry, and so happy to support it. And that'll be my final comments on the motion overall.
Thank you, Councillor Dominato. Councillor Carr.
Thanks very much, Chair. So I'm also going to support the strike and replace. It makes sense to me. I'll also give my final comments, as Councillor Dominato has just done, in order to say that I will be supporting the overall motion. I really appreciate the speakers who came, largely because they detailed the specifics of how it isn't working, and the incredible difficulty it has been going through COVID. I mean, to hear, in the Heather Group, one restaurant left standing, and the difficulty of having to keep open when you're not making them and keep staff in place when you're not making the money at a certain time of life. It just makes sense to me, and I appreciate Councillor Fry for bringing this forward. And again, thank the speakers very much for being here.
Thank you. And Councillor Kirby-Young, closing on your amendment.
Yeah, I'll just make a couple comments as well to the overall motions. It sounds like we're wrapping up. And I really appreciate Councillor Fry bringing this forward. I think that we need to support the businesses that have really been on their knees after the pandemic. We need to make it easier to do business in the city. Our regulations are complex, and we want to make the city more varied and fun. And sometimes people just want to go out for a drink. and have a cocktail. And, you know, I think about it, we are known to have some long council meetings, and sometimes we finish up late at night. And there's not that many places that you can actually just go and sort of sit comfortably and have a beverage. And so I can actually see, not without actually having to look too far beyond my own experience, an opportunity to kind of enjoy some of these places and spaces. I see other councillors smiling at that. I think it was 11:45 we finished last night. That might have been a bit late, but oftentimes it's 10. So I think we do want to be really creative, and I want to push it forward and be fun, but I also want to be sensitive to rebuilding some goodwill in Chinatown and the fact we have a historic neighborhood here and some other businesses to support. So hopefully this gives us some quick starts and some early wins, and we'll get some good feedback, and we can continue to expand these kinds of initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, and seeing as we're all sort of just moving on to closing, I just want to say that you know, I've been long invested in the well-being of the community and the neighborhood, and this is not something I put forward lightly or on a whim. There's been a long-standing frustration with some of the elements of the moratorium and some of the challenges to doing business in the community from a whole variety of different sectors. So, you know, after contemplating some of those asks and looking at the nuance behind the dual licensing and realizing how powerful a tool it was to just make that slight tweak that can actually change some of these dynamics and make just a marginally more favorable condition for businesses that are really struggling in some of our more struggling neighborhoods. And again, you know, building in the notion that we'll report back on this, and I appreciate Councillor Kirby-Young's additional amendment to further articulate how that report back will look. But we really can't afford to just sort of study it some more, because we do a lot of that kind of stuff and we really don't do a lot of action. So that's why I really went forward with this as pure direction rather than let's study it and maybe we'll come up with a recommendation in a year, because this is a critical time for a lot of businesses. We know that we have a real opportunity to turn things around post COVID, and I just want to reassure everybody that I put a lot of thought into this so that we are, you know, not throwing out the baby with the bathwater or whatever euphemism you want to use, but that we're actually thinking about this in a thoughtful and very measured approach, so that we're not opening it up to big wild nightclub kind of culture, but we're actually just taking a really thoughtful, measured approach to supporting local business and culture in some of our hardest hit neighborhoods. So closing on that.
Thank you. And Councillor Swanson.
Yeah, I can live with this because it's got existing and in stream, and it's going to be a report back after to see how it works. So I'll go for it too.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Swanson. So it sounds like we can go to a vote there.
And just a point of privilege, Chair, it's Councillor DiGenova. If I could get a vote in favor.
Yes, so we're going for a vote. Thank you, clerks. And Councillor DiGenova asked for a vote assist in favor. Oh, Councillor DiGenova, apologies, but your camera does need to be on to vote. Okay, I'm not hearing any response from Councillor DiGenova, so we're going to have to mark Councillor DiGenova as absent. So we're moving back to the main queue. So that amendment has passed with none in opposition. We're moving back to the main queue. Councillor Swanson, you still have the floor.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Kirby-Young is a holdover. So seeing no other councillors on the queue, we're going to vote on the final motion as amended. I'm just giving the clerks a moment to... That moved relatively quickly. So now we're back to vote on the motion as amended. And that motion passes with none in opposition. Okay, thank you very much, Council. So we'll be, and thank you very much, speakers, for coming to speak to Council and for calling in to speak to Council. We are going to be moving to our next item. I just want to pause for a moment to ask the clerks to ensure that Councillor Wiebe is contacted and brought back into the meeting.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to be moving on here to item number 10, our next agenda item, which is scaling seniors' housing needs in False Creek South, which was originally members' motion B4, moved and introduced by Councillor Fry and seconded by Councillor Hardwick. So we are now going to hear from speakers to this item. And our first registered speaker is Richard Evans, who is here in person. Richard, you're welcome to start. I'll just get your microphone is on. Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. Mayor and councillors, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Richard Evans and I'm an architect, member of a housing cooperative in False Creek South, and chair of the Replan Committee of the False Creek South Neighborhood Association. My remarks to you are on behalf of Replan and the association and in support of council members' motion scaling seniors' housing needs in False Creek South. Please know that there are many, many more people in our community who want to speak to this issue, who want you to hear how important this is to them. On this occasion, and out of respect for Council's busy schedule, we have intentionally agreed to limit the number of speakers to 3, and the association has prepared a statement of support from its president, Wendy Hurden, that reads, as you may be aware, the False Creek South Neighborhood Association represents all of the resident enclaves, co-ops, and stratas on City of Vancouver leasehold lands and a number of freehand enclaves as well. The members of the False Creek South Neighborhood Association are these enclaves themselves, each of which provides, through a line item on its annual budget, the funds that allow the association to function, and also names delegates to represent these member enclaves in the association's work. I'm writing to convey the association's strong support for the concept of a campus of care in our community, and to urge you to support the motion before you on scaling seniors' housing needs in False Creek South that we see as an important step forward, making this concept a reality. Sincerely yours, Wendy Hurden, President. I also notice a speaker that cannot present today from the Seniors Advisory Committee, and I understand that organization speaks in favor as well. We trust that you will hear the voices of our community. Like so many others in the city, they are worried about if and how they will age in their own community and are facing an aging crisis in False Creek South that impacts every generation here. Please help us address this crisis by approving this motion to get the ball rolling. As chair of Replan, I've participated in many public forums and discussions in the False Creek South community about the campus of care. In fact, the concept of the campus grew out of these years of conversations. It has developed and evolved out of discussions between the community and city staff and continues to be a high priority for us. It addresses a number of issues which we are constantly aware of, and movement on this project would go a long way to address some of the very real anxiety we feel about our future in the neighborhood. The False Creek South community's work toward turning this anxiety into viable ideas grew substantially when the Broadway Group, as represented by their executive director, Simon Neal, approached the association with a very real issue. The capacity of the existing Broadway Lodge facility needed to be increased. Simon's instinct to address this need in concert with the association was the foundation of the campus concept and the reason why Simon has become a highly valued contributor to Replan. The organizational interests of both aligned. One very tangible result of this work is the motion that you have before you today, reflecting the cornerstone of the Broadway Group and community's interest to meet a critical community need. It is a commitment to explore and move forward the idea of a campus of care on the city-owned lands in False Creek South, which is a very welcome door-opening gesture to a community that has expressed many times to staff and council that we are willing and able to work with you to achieve council policy, particularly with respect to developing housing and wraparound services for the growing population of seniors in and near False Creek South to age in community, to secure care and housing for adults with disabilities, and open up new and existing housing for young families. This objective has been a much expressed intention of the Broadway Group and the other interested False Creek cooperatives and affordable housing providers in False Creek South. With this motion as a foundation, we can now start to build the necessary relationships and partnerships to undertake the feasibility and project development work needed to identify and secure private and public funding sources and begin to undertake this vital work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You do have questions, Councillor Hardwick.
Thank you very much, Richard. Could you talk a little bit about the demographic shift in False Creek? And I think that plays a really important role in this. And I know it's something that you've studied and your group has studied in some detail, and how that affects the sort of the time sensitivity to this particular initiative.
Well, I think, as you all know, and we are certainly well aware of the fact that we're all aging, and particularly so in False Creek South, because the experiment that was started back in the 70s to attract a variety of incomes and people, different tenure groups to the community is successful, and we've stayed. And it's time now to grow out, to accommodate the increased needs. So for us, and particularly in my cooperative, we would be in a position with something like this to enable people like me actually to transition to age-appropriate housing to free up housing for more families. So that's why it's a pressing need right now, because yes, the population in False Creek South is growing for the very fact that the community is successful and has attracted people to it.
So the logic is that the older folks can move into seniors housing and free up some of those family size units for young families.
That's correct, yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. You do have further questions, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Hi, Richard. I'm trying to parse through some feedback here and strike the balance, because I think we're all rowing in the same direction about supporting a campus of care and sort of the importance and the need to gain some momentum around that, if I can put it that way. I'm wondering how you respond to some of the feedback that we have from staff is like, I guess my first question is, what's the urgency now?
Simon Neal will speak to the actual factual data behind that urgency, and I'll leave it to Simon. He's got the numbers and we'll present them in a few minutes.
Okay.
But there's a growing crisis and need in the community and wider.
Okay. So on that note, some of the comments, I hear you on that we've gotten from staff are sort of a concern that if we kind of leapfrog the process, specifically with the Broadway Group, the phenomenal job they're doing, that it might preclude having a broader vision for the campus of care and having broader provincial funding and support coming in. If, giving them an opportunity to play a bigger role in terms of investment and augmenting those needed health services. And so if you're sitting here looking at that feedback and thinking about it, what's your response to that?
Well, again, I think Simon can speak to that as well, but I think we need to get the ball rolling so we can understand what these interests and potential opportunities could be. And right now it's just been in a holding pattern, waiting for a signal from the city to start those conversations to see what this could become. But the jump starting you refer to has really been a need to try to get something going and start doing something, because up till now it's just been in stasis and we haven't been able to do anything. So there could be opportunities like that I'm sure will be explored, and Simon can speak to that as well. But I think this particular motion is basically a door opening to those opportunities that you're hinting at.
Okay. So we're trying to it's a question of how we get there, but I think sounds like we're all aligned on wanting to get there.
I certainly hope so.
Okay, super. Thanks. Thank you for speaking.
Okay.
Thank you. And you do have further questions, Councillor Fry.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. And also just thank you for your group graciously agreeing to not send in a ton of speakers. It really does make a difference to us here at council, because we are slammed with work. So appreciate that very much. With regard to some of the feedback that we got from staff, and certainly they did reflect some concerns around what sole sourcing might mean for VCH and that kind of thing. And Councillor Hardwick and I kind of amended the motion to reflect some of those concerns and kind of softened it so that we're really directing staff to come back and report back. One of the other comments we got from staff, though, and so I think we've left the door open for that, but one of the other comments that we got back from staff was, now I can't find it. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. Yeah, that they were concerned about the timeline and that this work might impact the current planning process. And knowing that you're pretty engaged in the planning process at Replan, how is that going? The planning process that we've embarked upon since the council motion of October.
Well, it is not. We've always seen this initiative as a catalyst, and I know that there's lots of thinking to do within the planning department to get the initiative underway to meet that council motion and amendments last October, which is very much what we're interested in doing. So hopefully these can run parallel. Well, I know that they can run parallel from what I've heard people say and experts say. So I guess, as always, we remain hopeful that we can get the planning process going as soon as possible. And I hope and understand that that's probably the case relatively soon. But we didn't in any way think that the one would conflict with the other, and in fact go in parallel and be a catalyst for the kind of thinking that needs to happen in the community, and one will inform the other. Hope that's answered
So
your question.
just to finer point on the idea of a catalyst, because we've heard the narrative that there's lots of folks who are aging in place in oversized units. They've got 2-3 bedrooms. They don't need it. They could easily downsize and free up that space for a family if they had a place to go, which is sort of what we're touching on here. Do you see this then as a catalyst for bigger land use decisions that have to happen?
Yes, that's very much the motivation for a lot of the things we've been talking about for years. And I spoke to it in Councillor Hardwick's question, that we've got an aging population, particularly in my co-op, where yes, it could be a much wider policy direction to include much more than the campus of care in that decision making, and free up a lot of that housing to be suitable for more seniors, so that I think we would in the process free up more space for families moving into the neighborhood. I think that's entirely possible.
Thanks, Richard. Out of time.
Thanks very much, Councillor Fry. And more questions, Councillor Carr?
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much. We've heard a lot about this campus of care over a number of years, so I'm appreciative of the motion coming forward and you speaking to it. So as Councillor Fry noted, there have been some issues raised in terms of staff's feedback on this motion to us as councillors. One question that I have for you arising from that is it more important to you that the campus of care get established and that the city provide land for that, even if it means not necessarily a group or an operator if they are not a nonprofit? Now, there might be problems related to the city granting land to anything but a nonprofit.
Oh, I see. Well, I think you'll have to ask Simon that question.
Okay, I can do that.
Please do.
But from my point of view, how important is it that it's this operator versus a grant of land for a campus of care?
Oh, I see. Oh boy. I think Simon's been such a part of Replan and the thinking, it would be hard to disengage myself from that. But the relationship has been so good. I can see the potential of that being possible, but I think to implement the kind of thinking that we're doing, and to doing it in conjunction with Simon and his organization, would certainly be the step forward in the kinds of ways that we're thinking about how we can implement that kind of policy in a way that we've been thinking about it for so long. I know I'm being kind of convoluted in my answer, but I suppose it can be another way, but with Simon and his organization, I think it would be better, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, an alternative is that there is if there's land, maybe it just can't be a grant.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's illegal. I can't
right.
Address
that question. But I am hearing that the proposal and the vision for the campus of care,
yes,
that has been presented by Simon is very much integral to to what you and Replan as a whole
Yes, and the
are
community.
looking, and the community as a whole.
That's correct, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Carr. And those are all your questions, Richard. So thank you for coming into council to speak today. Next, we have speaker number 2, who originally was registered in person but is calling in. Speaker number 2, Sharon Yandel.
Yes, hello.
Hi, yes, we can hear you. Please feel free to begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I have, sorry, I just have to get rid of some background noise here. Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm hearing an echo, but I'm not certain if you are. Could you tell me if you are?
We can hear you and there's no echo. You sound fine.
Okay, good. Good. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm past president of the Fall Street South Neighborhood Association, but I'm speaking on my own behalf in support of this motion. I recently attended the 80th birthday party of a friend. Almost all of the 40 or so guests were in their 70s and 80s, animate and articulate. But if you'd ask any of those present what ails or inhibits us, you would be listening to a litany of problems, what my impatient daughter calls the organ recital. But let's say you were so wise as to avoid the organ recital and instead asked us to choose from a list one word that describes more than anything what we want most in our lives at this point. You might think of words like safety, security, care, comfort, but I think our first choice would be autonomy. Autonomy to decide not just the big things, but the little things. When to get up in the morning and when to go to bed. When to eat. When to be with others and how many others. When to be alone. All the tiny autonomous decisions we've made every day throughout our adult lives. None of the 40 people at that party wants to be in a long-term care facility. In fact, I have never met anyone who doesn't see long-term care as some kind of incarceration or who doesn't approach the idea without fear and trepidation. And 3 times over a 15-year period, I myself have had to make that decision for my mother, my mother-in-law, and my aunt, when neither they nor the family could manage anymore. But people like them and like me have spent our lives in the public sphere, in the workforce, going to restaurants and cafes. We hope not to feel we're being herded 3 times a day to eat alongside dozens of others in a warehouse-like setting as none of our homes ever are or were. But as the very old expression has it, when the devil drives, needs must, and we do what we have to do. In saying this, in no way do I disparage the work of those who direct or provide that care. Au contraire, I marvel at the work they do, sometimes under the worst of circumstances, as the pandemic tragically revealed. The problem is that the model is wrong. But the proposed campus of care is a different model, one that reflects aging itself, which is gradual and cumulative. It blurs the distinction between home and neighborhood and facility to a network of services on and off the premises to meet not only medical needs, but also social needs, allowing a person as much autonomy as circumstances permit. As an optimum place for this concept, Falls Creek South is a positive version of a perfect storm. Consider 4 elements at play. First, Falls Creek South contains double the city's average of those over age 65. While we desperately need more young families, and they desperately need the affordable housing that can be provided in Falls Creek South, this demographic is a plus for creating a new model of aging in community. Secondly, through its physical design and its income mix, people in Falls Creek South are already integrated in so many ways. All our homes and outside space are partly private, but also shared with others, and our everyday lives toggle back and forth between both spheres. Thirdly, Broadway Lodge is in need of expansion and motivated to provide a showcase of what aging in community can be. And fourth, perhaps most importantly, the city owns the land and is not encumbered by the imperatives surrounding private land ownership. For a small part...
Sorry, Speaker, I'm just going to pause you and just pause your timer. Councillor DiGenova, I believe you're not on mute, so if you wouldn't mind just going on mute, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, you have 30 seconds, Speaker, to complete your remarks. Thank you.
For a small part of this land to be made available for campus of care is your decision to make, and toward that end, I urge your support for this motion. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Apologies for the interruption.
No problem.
So we do appreciate hearing from you today. You explained yourself very well, and there are no questions at this time.
Thank you.
And next we have speaker number 3, Simon Neal.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You're welcome to start whenever you're ready.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Well, I will say I had a presentation prepared to speak for 5 minutes, but listening to some of the questions and comments, I think maybe it's better just to focus on a couple of points and then move to questions. So, first of all, the Broadway Group. We are a non-profit, or in fact, we're a group of 3 non-profits. We've been operating in Falls Creek South for over 40 years. We run Broadway Lodge and residences for independent living, both non-profit, publicly funded care facilities, one for seniors and the other for adults with disabilities. We do have existing leases for 20 and 16 years in Falls Creek South. The idea would not be to have a lot more land allocated to us than we already have, but would be to bring those 2 sites, the area of those 2 sites together, and actually be able to put a campus of care and a greater economy of scale on 1 piece of land rather than 2. We're certainly not looking to bypass process, but we are looking to find a way to get this project up and running, and for us to continue, the decades of non-profit care that we've been providing within there. We would need to do that hand in hand with Vancouver Coastal Health and with the Ministry of Health and with BC Housing, in fact, and all those parties have been part of the initial discussions around that. And in our conversations with staff, the conversation has been, how can we come together to draw them around the table? And the purpose of this motion is really to say, is for the city to show a commitment to the process that allows us to draw those people around the table and those organizations around the table. The other thing I did want to say before I move over to questions, though, is to really focus on not just the numbers. The numbers are critical. You've got double the number of seniors in Falls Creek South, as I think Sharon just said, than you have on average in the city. And that's going to get worse in the next 10 years. And you will have double the number of seniors in 10 to 15 years' time in the population generally than you do right now. And we are woefully unprepared to address those issues. And if we're going to do something like this on city land and have it built in 10 years' time, we really need to get going. And so that's why we're trying to draw people around the table. Again, there's no fait accompli in this motion. We're looking to get the conversation going. And, to the point of why should the Broadway Group be part of that? Well, because we're there, we're on existing land. It's an expansion of our existing services. We've been a partner with the city for 40 years already on both sides. We'd like to continue in Falls Creek South doing the great work we're doing. We've got over 200 staff who've just had the most ridiculous 2 years behind them. We want to get behind them and say there's a future for you here, and in fact we're gonna do it better and longer and keep doing what we're doing. So that's the intent here. That's what we're trying to achieve. We very much see ourselves as part of the community. We believe this is a community initiative. It's not a Broadway Group initiative. It's a community initiative, which Broadway Group is part of. And we're hoping, councillors, that we can get your support for the motion today.
Okay, thank you very much. You do have questions, Councillor Fry.
So, Simon, without presupposing where Vancouver Coastal Health may be on this, or where senior government funding may come from, what does the ability to have some kind of agreement in principle mean? Some kind of MOU to have those conversations? What do you need to have those conversations?
Yeah, so the truth is, and we're going to hear more about this in the coming months, but the truth is we know within our system that there's going to be a massive injection of cash. Well, there has to be a massive injection of cash to both renew existing facilities like Broadway Lodge, and so Broadway Lodge will close in the next 20 years if we don't renew it because it's not modern enough. So there's a mass injection of cash that's going to come over the next 5 to 10 years for us to renew and build new beds. Not as much in Vancouver as in, say, Fraser Valley, but still there is a definite need for increase within Vancouver. What we have right now is that Broadway Lodge is kind of stuck when it talks to VCH because it only has 20 years left on a lease and we have no guarantees of anything else. So we can't talk about how we improve, renew and increase our services for seniors in Falls Creek South. What this motion will allow us to do is to come with the city saying, yeah, you know what, there's a process to go through, but we are behind this campus of care and we would, if Vancouver Coastal Health wishes to continue its contract for long-term care with Broadway Lodge and Rills in Falls Creek South, then the city is around the table to discuss how that land would be made available to do so. If we don't do that, sorry, Councillor Fry, can I just say, if we don't do that in the next few years, we're probably going to miss that opportunity because the cash injection needs to happen before 2030, certainly before 2035 for sure, but mostly before 2030, in order to make sure the beds are available by the time the aging demographic starts to peak in the mid-2030s. So really speaking, if we count back from 2035, we're 13 years off. We've got a couple of years before we start, before we can even start thinking about getting spades in the ground and everything like that. We're really on a ticking timeline here. And what's going to happen is when we need to spend that money quickly, then those who have land and those who have capital available are going to be able to respond more quickly. And that generally isn't going to be the non-profits in Vancouver.
Gotcha. I wanted to ask you about how accessibility standards have changed since Broadway Lodge was built and if it could be retrofitted into the building, but I'm out of time, so I can't ask you that question.
Okay, we'll have to leave that there. Thank you. Sorry, you do have more questions. Councillor Reid.
Yeah, I'd like to know how the accessibility standard can be retrofit into the building if possible for the next 20 years.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Reid. So Broadway Lodge is a concrete monstrosity in some senses. It's a beast, and every second room has a concrete wall, and that wall is structural. It's very institutional in the way that it's laid out. We've tried many ways at looking at how we could rejig the home to something less institutional. There are no options available to us that would allow the economy of scale. It's a very long, thin institutional building, and it would mean a reduction of long-term care beds because under the long-term care regulations as they are right now, rooms and meeting space are required to be certain sizes, and Broadway Lodge's sizes do not meet those regulations, and neither should they. The rooms should be bigger for seniors. So really speaking, the option to do long-term care in any economical sense in a modern setting within Broadway Lodge is very, very limited indeed.
Okay, thank you for that. My second question is, you talked about that space needed is just a little bit larger than the two parcels put together. Can you speak to what determination of size of lot that you are looking for? And because I see this as swing space, but can you speak to the actual land that you are looking for to make this work from a feasibility standpoint?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a how long is a piece of string answer, unfortunately. So within the campus of care, what we would love to achieve is we would love to achieve a 200-bed long-term care home, which is not institutional, but it's divided into individual apartments of 8 to 12 people where specific care for certain acuities and specific care needs are addressed in a much calmer, more home-like environment. So there'd be a 200-bed care facility, then affordable housing for seniors where we can put services around those seniors as they age in place. And, by the way, decrease the number of them that end up then in long-term care, and certainly the number that end up in hospital and acute care. But what we would also like to do is more affordable housing surrounding that, and the stratas and the co-ops have expressed interest around that as well. Certainly the co-ops have expressed interest around that, to make sure that it's more of a campus of multi-generational living in that space. So the short answer, therefore, is that the long-term care facility, the 200-bed long-term care facility in and of itself, would take up much less space than the 2 parcels of land we have right now. The 2 parcels of land we have right now are somewhere around the 40,000 square feet of land. For the campus of care and the affordable housing for the seniors, we think we're looking around the 50 to 60,000 square feet of land, assuming a maximum of 8 stories.
Okay, thank you. That's my time.
Thanks very much, Councillor Wiebe.
Thanks.
And Councillor Kirby-Young.
I'll go after Councillor Carr.
You're going off the queue?
I'll go after.
Oh, after. Okay, apologies. Councillor Carr, questions to the speaker.
Great, thanks very much. Thank you so much for speaking to us, and also all the work you're doing with community and the services you're providing. It's great. So just clarify for me, does Broadway Group currently operate on those 2 pieces of land with funding agreements from the provincial government? From, I guess, yeah.
Correct, and has been for 40 years.
40 years, okay. And who owns the 2 pieces of land?
So the city-owned land.
Those 2 pieces are city-owned already, right?
Correct. They were given.
Go ahead.
Sorry, they were leased to us for the purposes of building the 2 facilities that were built.
Right. Okay. So you already have a relationship with the city and a relationship with the provincial government.
Correct.
Right. Okay. And is it the interest? Is it there's somehow in the mix of all of this, there's this idea of making land available. Is that just making land in a new piece of land that you've mentioned? Is that making land available through a lease situation?
Yes.
Okay. You have clarified my questions and my concerns. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. And those are all of your questions. So thank you very much for calling in this afternoon.
Thank you.
So, councillors, we're going to go back to the main queue as this brings us to the end of the speakers list. So I'd like to thank all speakers for coming in and also calling in to speak to council. So we'll take us back to the main queue. Is there any discussion?
Chair, at an appropriate moment, I do have a number of comments to make.
Okay, why don't we start there?
Thanks. And just to ensure that council has the full context. Obviously, there was a number of comments that were provided by staff to the motion, some of which were incorporated and some of which weren't. So I want to speak to that. Specifically, the primary concern I have is just around the timeline and the feasibility of staff being able to report back with anything substantive in a matter of a few months. Given what else is going on right now, I think we've had a very constructive staff have myself and Karen Levitt had a really constructive conversation with Richard Evans and Simon, and I think have a good grasp of the issue here. I do agree that this is a piece of work that can move forward in parallel with the planning process, so I don't believe it needs to be held up. But as you may have gathered, even from the questions and answers that are provided here, this is quite a complex piece of work. And there is the relationship with VCH is a key part of this, and a clear understanding that needs to be developed between the Broadway Group and the city and VCH around what each party is contemplating here and what we're actually talking about. Just in the course of the questions, there was reference to the fact of a grant. Again, this is a provincially funded service. The notion of granting city land for provincially funded healthcare raises all sorts of implications that need a lot of work. So I think that's the primary issue, Chair, from staff at this point is I just want to be realistic about what we're going to be able to do in the short period of time. We have spoken about how we move this forward in conjunction with Simon. and with VCH, and I think we're committed to do that. I recognize the point he made around the clock ticking down on the existing leases for the Broadway Group in Falls Creek. That is a real issue, and we do need to start the conversation with VCH and with Simon around the renewal of those facilities, what that would look like and what it would take. So I think the notion of moving this piece of work forward makes sense. No disagreement from me on that. It was more, again, just a question of what's realistic for staff on the timeline.
Okay, thank you very much. I do appreciate those, hearing those comments. And for all of council to have heard those same comments. So I see Councillor Carr, you're on the queue. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, City Manager. Appreciate your comments on that. And I was a bit confused because some of the staff notes did talk about a grant, but I could just questioned the speaker, Simon Neal, and that's not the answer I got from him. I got the answer that the intention would be a lease, which matches what currently is going on there. A lease by an operator to supply services funded through Vancouver Coastal Health on city-owned land, but a lease. So I'm comfortable in hearing the answers that I got, so I am prepared to support this motion.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Carr. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks to the city manager for those salient comments. I do want to reflect just a little bit on that because the tenor of the enactment clause in this motion, as was Councillor Hardwick in my final submission, is very much not prescriptive, does not allude to any grants whatsoever. Really, what we're contemplating in this enactment is that the general manager of ACCS report back in September 2022, and I can see that might be a difficult timeline, but we're also in the context of an election, so we need to have some kind of certainty on our part, I think, but it's on a process for council consideration to make land available for New Falls Creek. I mean, this process for council consideration could well articulate some of the stuff the city manager has suggested and some of the more complex issues, but I think what is paramount here, and as the city manager himself agreed to, is that we are moving in this direction. So I think a report back with a process for our consideration is not overly prescriptive. It does send a signal that we are at least interested in furthering the conversation with Simon and his group, and that we recognize that there is an aging population of Falls Creek South, and indeed in the city. And I have to say, I was a little chilled to hear Simon reference that the province was looking at spending money elsewhere and out in the valley, but not necessarily in the city of Vancouver. And there's a pattern that I see establishing here where the city of Vancouver is expected to do a lot of heavy lifting, but we don't get a lot of support from our provincial partners on some of these kind of critical issues. So that's a conversation for another day, and I think underscores the urgency of having some kind of forward momentum, and that we as a city are really thinking about our aging population and what's that going to mean in a city like Vancouver, and are we even going to have space for folks to age in our city? I think those are really critical elements to this conversation, but really all we're asking for is a report back for consideration on a possible process that can move us forward. So appreciate the city manager's comments, but I'm totally comfortable with the work that we've done and the resolution enactment that we're putting forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fry. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks. Can I ask a point of information through you, Chair, to the city manager?
Please state your point of information.
Thank you. Paul, you had mentioned that the land is leased. Can you confirm if that land is leased at market rate, or is it leased below market and therefore constitutes a grant currently?
Thanks through the chair for the question. I actually don't have the details on that. It's certainly a below market lease would constitute a grant.
Okay, but at this point we can't confirm that it's necessarily.
I don't have the specifics of the current arrangement. Sorry to talk over you, Councillor. I apologize for that. And obviously, what happens in the future is a whole separate question around what's happened here. So yeah, these are all key issues that would have to be worked through. And we're just not at that stage yet.
Okay, thank you. I would like to table an amendment for council's consideration on this, just to perhaps add some clarity, if I can do that.
I'll move us to an amendment Q1, and I'll clear that queue. And Councillor Kirby-Young, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And I think that, I mentioned earlier in asking questions of Richard Evans that I think everybody's rowing in the same direction here around the importance of the campus of care, about its new and revitalized future, and the importance of supporting our aging population, which is higher than city demographics, specifically in this area. But I just thought it might be helpful, given some of the conversation, to add just a couple of what I hope will be perceived as friendly clarifying amendments. I see we've lost a screen, FYI, behind you.
Just takes a moment to come up.
Oh, okay. It's just that it was blank. That's why I was wondering.
I'll have to look at it.
Okay. But while that's happening, it just simply inserts after "to make land available," to say "on a leased basis" for clarity around intention. And it also adds language that says, also to help facilitate some of these conversations, I really heard and took to heart a window of opportunity potentially for provincial funding. And so it also says, add some language and initiate dialogue with the provincial government to support enabling the Broadway Group to develop MOUs. So again, just a little bit of clarification there around roles and intent.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Kirby-Young, we are trying to actually solve this. Screen did cut out and is not turning back on, so we'll just give us a moment. And if anybody would like to speak to this amendment, they can join the queue.
It's back.
Looks like we have it. So I'm not seeing any other councillors joining the queue, so I will take that as an indication that we can vote on the amendment. Oh, Councillor Fry, very last second there.
Well, I still don't see it on the screen. So it's on the WebEx, it's just coming up as a big black screen.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. Just we had it in the chambers for a moment, but we do have IT looking into it. I will just bear with me for one moment, please. Councillor Fry, can you confirm that you can see it?
Yes, I can now.
Great, thank you. Yes, it's just started working again. Okay, so any further comments, Councillor Fry?
Well, I'm just reading through it. This is in bold on a lease basis, which makes sense. Initiate dialogue with the provincial government to support enabling. I guess a point of information then through you to the mover of the amendment. Initiating dialogue with the provincial government, is that the intention for the city of Vancouver to initiate the dialogue, or for the Broadway Group?
All right, so point of information through you, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, it follows on the clause around directing the GM, and the intention, Councillor Fry, is to initiate dialogue from the perspective of the city, indicating its support and ensuring that the provincial government's apprised that a campus of care is envisioned as part of the False Creek South development, that there is a commitment to having one, and to support conversations from that perspective, that we can lend that voice to assist that dialogue and that conversation.
Okay, back to
Okay.
you.
Thank you for that clarification. I do worry that this amendment is perhaps overly prescriptive in limiting it to the provincial government, not including, say, Vancouver Coastal Health, who specifically were the subject of some of the staff comments, and presumably the federal government may be partners in that. So I am actually struggling with the prescriptive nature of this amendment, and that it may limit other options in the conversation. I see Councillor Hardwick on the queue, so I'm just going to step back for a second while I think this through.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fry. Councillor Hardwick.
Yeah, also through you, Chair, to the mover of the amendment. After discussion of trying not to be prescriptive, why would you introduce an amendment that makes it prescriptive?
Well, that is a point of information. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Is it a point of information, or was that just pontification? I wasn't sure.
No, it's a question.
It's a fine line. It's your choice to respond to it, Councillor Kirby-Young.
I think it's in an effort to be responsive to the different feedback that we've heard and clarify the respective roles, because I did take to heart the response from the city manager around the senior levels of government, whether it's VCH, the province being responsible for provincial health care, and the city certainly has the historic precedent of having leased land to the Broadway Group. So, perhaps the language could be improved, and if the council wants to take that on, I would welcome that. But the spirit of it was really around trying to affirm sort of desire to move this forward, but the respective roles of the different parties, so that was clear. That was the aim.
Well, perhaps Councillor Fry will have further. On the surface, I was fine with the way it is. I'm a bit concerned about the prescriptive nature of the amendment. That's all I have to say on the subject.
Thank you, Councillor Fry.
Yeah, likewise, I'm going to agree with Councillor Hardwick on this. I think it is overly prescriptive. We are now presupposing that they're going to report back with considerations based on some pretty rigid criteria, i.e. on a leased basis, as opposed to whatever other option might be available for our consideration that the GM might come up with. And similarly, initiating dialogue with the provincial government, but not including Coastal Health or the feds or even private partners, I suppose. So I'm gonna not support this amendment. I appreciate that it was an intent to bring on some additional clarity, but I think it actually just adds a bit more confusion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just speaking very pragmatically and working with the time we had, Council had really late hours, so there hasn't been tons of time to dialogue and prep on these things. And so the comment I would make, and I referenced it earlier, if somebody wants to amend to add in the other parties, absolutely welcome that. Concern I had with it as it stood, when it said make land available, is that I think there was a real interpretation. It was certainly mine when I read it originally. It raised a whole bunch of flags for me. And to manage expectations of the community that the city might donate this land or make it available. And we've got some pretty complex and significant considerations happening with respect to the land in False Creek South, and wanting to sort of first and foremost keep a lot of those co-op and nonprofit and other residents whole. And so I'm very sensitive about managing expectations and clarifying that. And I think that different people obviously read it different ways, but I think when it says make land available, to me that really came across from my perspective as the city's providing land. But again, if somebody wants to amend it, completely open to that.
Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Fry. Oh, sorry.
So that'd be Councillor Carr.
That's Councillor Carr.
They mix us up all the time. It's fine.
Councillor Carr, please go ahead.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it's possible to sever in terms of on a leased basis, which is a different clause than the other part of the sentence.
Okay, let me just confer with the clerks, because it, of course, is drafted as essentially one sentence. 1 minute.
There is at least a semicolon.
So we've had a request to sever, and the feedback from clerks is that it would have to be the best way to amend the language as it's written in one concise format would actually be to make an amendment to the amendment.
Okay. I'll take myself off the list for now.
Point of privilege, Chair. I'm sorry, my camera has turned itself off arbitrarily, and I'm going to need to reboot my computer and come right back.
Okay, and were you on the queue to let us know that, or did you want to comment?
No, I was on the queue to let you know that, because I know I will need to be on camera in order to vote, and my camera just went out. So
okay,
I'll be right back.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Carr, over to you.
It's just a point of privilege in terms of figuring out how to amend this. Anyway, I'm sorry I'm going through this time. I'm going to
I'm
take
just
myself
noting
off.
that it is 5 minutes to 5 and this meeting is scheduled to end. So if we were hoping to complete this
yes.
item, we do need to have
Could
some.
I have move a motion to extend past 5 o'clock to complete this item?
Yes, we have a motion on the floor to complete this item. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we will go beyond 5 o'clock to complete this item, but I think it's safe to say that we won't be hearing from any speakers for item 11 who I know who had called in. So thank you for doing that, and we hope to hear from you on Thursday. Okay, Councillor Carr.
I'm trying to figure out how to amend this, so I'm not talking. I'll just see if I can get that done.
We are in a bit of a holding pattern at this point.
Right, this is City Moderator. Just to inform you, Council will complete this item and then we'll continue.
And given that Councillor Hardwick is having a computer issue and the video won't turn on, and we do need to ensure that all council members are able to vote, I'm going to suggest that we take a 3-minute recess. That will allow Councillor Hardwick to come back on and we'll be able to vote on this amendment. So we'll come back in 3 minutes.
Sorry about that. It's never happened before.
Not a problem. We just wanted to make sure everyone was able to vote. So we are, Councillor Carr, you still have the floor. Sorry, bear with us for just a second to have your mic on.
Thank you. Yes, I did forward an amendment to the amendment, and that is to strike the second part of it and leaving in the on leased land. And I did that because it was clear in speaking to Simon Neal that the expectation was to continue the lease or a lease, a different kind of lease, but whatever. That it still the expectation was to be a lease, and I removed the words about getting staff to dialogue with the provincial government. Partly because it seems I don't understand what that process would be about at this point. But secondly, I'm concerned after the city manager's comments with that would add more work to city staff at a time when they're already concerned about the amount of work. So,
great, thank you. I will move us to an amendment Q2 as it is an amendment to an amendment. And Councillor Fry, I'll advance you.
Yeah, appreciate the intent. I appreciate the intent to move this along. I won't be supporting this amendment to the amendment or the amendment. I likely this would be land available on a leased basis, but again, I'd like our staff and the GM of ACCS to report back with a process for consideration, and that may include land lease, that may include land trust, that may include a land swap. I've been doing a lot of reading about life leases lately, which is a whole new kind of construct specifically for seniors living that is happening elsewhere in the province, and we could use more of it here. It's similar to what they do at the Performing Arts Lodge. So I don't want to get overly prescriptive. We actually, Hardwick and I modified this to be less prescriptive so that we could kind of appease some of staff's concerns and really make this really open-ended so that we can allow staff to not feel boxed into any kind of commitment. And so leased basis, I don't know. I want staff to tell us it should be a leased or what. So there you go. Won't support this to the other one. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. And seeing no one else on the queue, we'll move to a vote on the amendment to the amendment.
And point of privilege, Chair, if I could get a vote in opposition, please. It's Councillor DiGenova.
Thank you, Councillor DiGenova. And that motion fails with Councillors DiGenova, Councillor Fry, Councillor Swanson, Councillor Hardwick, and Councillor Dominato in opposition. And now we'll move back to the amendment as it was unamended. And Councillor Fry, I think that's a holdover from your speaking to the amendment. So just pausing for a moment to see if there's any other councillors that wish to speak to the unamended amendment, and I don't see any, so we'll move to a vote.
Just a point of privilege, if I could get a vote assist in favor, it's Councillor DiGenova. Thank you.
And that's registered. Thank you, Councillor DiGenova. And I'm just checking to see if we still have Councillor Weeb. Councillor Weeb, we need your camera on to register your vote. Thank you very much. So,
point of privilege, Chair, if I may. Trying to turn on my video. I'm having the same issue as Councillor Hardwick. Is this is to the main motion or the amendment?
This is to the amendment.
Okay, to the amendment, if I could get a vote assist in opposition to the amendment. My apologies, I thought we were back to the main motion. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor DiGenova's voted in opposition. Okay, and that motion fails with Councillors Carr, DiGenova, Fry, Hardwick, Boyle, Dominato, and Bly in opposition. So we are back to the main queue on the motion unamended. And Councillor Kirby-Young, you have the floor.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Bly. I may need to call for reconsideration. I don't think I have the latest amendment that we were We're voting on additional language, Councillor Fry. We're voting on Councillor Carr's striking of the other language. Can you clarify, please?
So Councillor Carr's amendment to your amendment, language failed. So we went back to the original amendment that you moved. And we just voted on that, which failed. And so now we're back at the original motion.
Oh, okay. That's fine then. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much for asking that question. And any further comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. That might have been a holdover, but while I'm on, I will just say that I appreciate the years of work and visioning that the community has been doing on this issue, and trying to working on creative solutions for the issues that aging residents are facing. I absolutely hear and think it's important that we consider the issues that the staff raised, and I am glad that they are here. I think there's enough flexibility in the language before us to continue to address those concerns as we move forward. I'm glad to hear conversations about leasing and land trust. I certainly hope we're not looking at selling this land, but I don't hear that. All of these details about grants and lease amounts and partnerships are to come, and I'm glad to see that coming forward. I also hear the concern about timeline, and of course that's coming up for us on many issues, and so hope that whatever that update that we get in September can, it doesn't need to be, of course, a full report, but for council to have information as this progresses is going to be useful, but it is a big long-term project, so I expect that September update isn't going to have solved the whole problem. So just glad to see this continue to move forward, and grateful for the leadership that has gotten it this far, and councillors bringing it to us, acting in that liaison role. And I hope to see us be able to work with the province and with the neighborhood and with the health authority to bring to life the kind of exciting and important proposals and creative ideas that we've been hearing around this.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Councillor Swanson.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all the folks in Falls Creek that have worked so hard on this. I remember meeting with them before the election. This was a huge issue then, the campus of care and lease expirations. And here we are 4 years later, and we're still working on it. I'm sorry it's so slow, Falls Creek folks. I'm hoping we can get maybe a nominal lease and get this happening. And I just really want to commend all the folks in Falls Creek for working so hard on this and for being pit bulls and keeping on our case about it. I hope we can get somewhere quick.
Thank you. Councillor Weeb.
Yeah, I think it's important that we find ways to create swing spaces to build housing without displacement, and then be able to move people into adequate housing that meets their needs, especially with accessibility needs, making sure that they have the right size rooms. And so I think this is important for us to look at opportunities, creative solutions to ensure people can still live in place, and yet we can open up other opportunities for people to enjoy this amazing neighborhood. So yeah, thanks everyone involved. Thanks to the two councillors for bringing this forward, and I will be supportive.
Thank you, Councillor Weeb. And Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I appreciate the motion. I appreciate the conversation. I will support it. I'm very cognizant of the sense of time passing by for people, and wanting to see movement and some momentum on this. And I think that's really important as people, to provide the opportunity for people to age in place and hopefully expand that capacity and provide some certainty towards the future, which are all sort of, I think, very significant imperatives. The one thing that I will state for the record is I don't support any sale or gifting of city land. I think it's really important that city land remain in city ownership, and I take that philosophy, whether it's park space, whether it's retaining park space, or a number of other partnerships that we have with other organizations where we traditionally pursue a lease arrangement. So I wanted to sort of convey that and make that clear. And I think that that was an important conversation for council to have. But we do have a role, certainly, in building complete communities and leveraging the assets that we have, like land, to support that. So just wanted to provide that context, and I will support the motion happily. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young and Councillor Carr.
Yeah, just to also echo fellow councillors' points, this has been long in discussion within the community and with councillors. And there's been a very strong, compelling vision around a service that is being offered right now and that is only going to become more important and more needed, as has been pointed out, in terms of the aging population. It's integral, I think, to the vision that has been presented to us as council by Replan and the committee of the committee of the Falls Creek South Residents Association. And I just think, things are taking too long in many ways, and so it's good to see it get going. Thanks to Councillors Hardwick and Fry for bringing it to us.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carr. So with that, we can go to a voting panel.
And a point of privilege, Chair, if I could get a vote in favor, it's Councillor DiGenova.
Thank you, Councillor DiGenova. Clerks, I'm noticing Councillor Dominato is on video, but we're not registering a vote.
Can I get a vote assist in favor, please?
Thank you very much, Councillor Dominato. And so that motion passes with none in opposition. Okay, so that does complete this item number 10 on our agenda. And clerks, do I need a... Okay, so thank you very much. So this does, the standing committee portion of this meeting is now complete. And we will now, apologies, this is a recess. So standing committee is now recessed until Thursday, June 16th at 3 p.m. We will now convene in council to deal with the recommendations and actions from today's committee meeting. Okay, so I'm also, as Deputy Mayor, going to fill in for this particular moment as well. So we'll now reconvene in council to deal with the recommendations and actions from today's reconvened study committee on city finance and services meeting. Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Deputy Mayor Bly in the chair, Mayor Stewart as a leave of absence, Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor DiGenova.
Present.
Councillor Fry.
Here.
Councillor Swanson.
Here.
Councillor Hardwick.
Present.
Councillor Wiebe.
Present.
Councillor Boyle.
Present.
Councillor Dominato. Not here. Councillor Kirby-Young. You have quorum, Deputy Mayor Bly.
Thank you very much. So we need a motion to adopt the standing committee's recommendations for items 9 and 10.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I heard Councillor Fry move, Councillor Carr second. All those in favor say yay.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and we are now
Move to recess.
going to recess. Thank you very much. This council meeting is now recessed until the following conclusion of the Standing Committee on City Finance and Services meeting, which is on Thursday, tomorrow, June 16th at 3 p.m. Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you. Bye all.